My name is Maya Lin, and I am 24 years old. The morning of the most definitive day of my life, my eyes snapped open at 4:30 a.m. The sun hadn't even touched the skyline of Providence, Rhode Island, but sleep was the last thing on my mind. In exactly 12 hours, I had my final presentation interview for the Parsons School of Design Graduate Fellowship in New York City. 4 years of blood, sweat, and relentless hustle had led to this single moment. The endless nights over a drafting table, working a grueling side job at a local fabric store just to afford premium textiles, and the constant rejection letters I tore up until I finally got this one shot. Everything I had ever dreamed of was riding on this portfolio presentation, and I knew it. Hanging on the back of my closet door was my masterpiece, a tailored, deep emerald velvet trench coat. I had spent 3 months drafting, cutting, and sewing by hand. It wasn't just a garment, it was the centerpiece of my collection, a physical manifestation of my design philosophy, and my absolute armor for the interview. I had brushed and pressed it until it looked flawless. My older stepbrother Logan was 26 and still crashing at our house. He was the kind of person who viewed anyone else's success as a personal insult. Every grant I won, every design compliment I received from my professors, he met with a bitter sneer or a toxic backhanded comment masked as a joke. We hadn't spoken more than 10 words to each other in months. I thought keeping my distance would keep me safe. I was devastatingly wrong. I discovered what he had done at 7 a.m. The moment I stepped into my studio room, the air hit me. It was a sharp, sweet, chemical wrongness. Aerosol adhesive and black spray paint. I rushed to the closet. My emerald coat was still on the hanger, but someone had taken a can of industrial black spray paint and violently tagged a jagged, messy X right across the back, bleeding heavily into the delicate velvet fibers. It was ruined. Not an accident, not a spill. It was deliberate, cold-blooded sabotage. My chest heaved as I carried the heavy coat downstairs, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Logan was sitting at the kitchen island, scrolling through his phone without a care in the world. My stepmother was busy setting up the coffee maker. "Did you do this?" I asked, my voice cracking despite my best efforts to hold it together. Logan didn't even look up. He just shrugged and muttered, "Don't look at me. Maybe you shouldn't leave your expensive trash lying around." I turned to my stepmother, my eyes pleading for a shred of justice. She barely glanced at the ruined velvet before sighing. "Maya, don't start a massive drama today. It's just a coat. You're always looking for an excuse to play the victim." My father walked into the kitchen right then, catching only the end of the sentence. Without asking a single question, he pointed a finger at me. "Your mother is right, Maya. Drop the attitude. Don't ruin the family's morning because you're stressed about your interview." That was it. That was the sum total of my family's response to my hard work being defaced, hours before the most critical presentation of my life. Don't make a scene. Drop the attitude, as if I was the one who had brought toxicity into that house. I walked back up to my room, locked the door, sat on the floor clutching that defaced spray-painted velvet, and cried for exactly 10 minutes. I let the absolute fury and betrayal wash over me. Then I wiped my face, stood up, and looked at the coat in the mirror. The black paint had bonded with the deep green velvet fibers, hardening into a stiff, jagged scar. There was no washing it out, no hiding it. I could either drive to New York City wearing a piece of sabotaged clothing, or I could forfeit the interview entirely. And giving up was never an option. Instead of trying to brush it out, I grabbed a fabric marker and a bottle of metallic gold textile paint from my supply bin. If my armor was going to bear a scar, I was going to own it. For the next hour, I worked with furious precision, outlining the jagged edges of the black spray paint with clean, intentional lines of bright gold, turning the vandalism into a deliberate piece of abstract avant-garde design. I put on my structured cream trousers, a simple silk blouse, and threw the altered emerald trench coat over my shoulders. I looked in the mirror, It was loud, it was heavy, and it looked like a battle cry. I drove 3 hours down a 95 down to Manhattan alone. I walked into the bustling admissions floor at Parsons alone. The waiting room was filled with 12 other candidates, all dressed in pristine, hyper-minimalist black blazers and sleek designer labels. I sat straight and still, refusing to apologize for the striking scarred coat on my back with my posture or my eyes. When the door opened and my name was called, I walked into the evaluation room. Sitting at the center of the review panel was the director of the graduate fellowship, a legendary figure in the New York fashion industry, Dr. Evelyn Vance. Dr. Vance looked up from my digital portfolio. Her sharp, discerning eyes immediately zeroed in on my coat. She stared at the gold-rimmed black mark on the emerald velvet for 3 long seconds. Then she glanced down at my physical application folder, and her entire expression shifted from standard academic politeness to intense curiosity. She closed the folder slowly, leaned back in her chair, and looked right into my eyes. "Well, aren't you a surprise?" I didn't flinch. I held her gaze and said, "I like to think my work speaks for itself, Dr. Vance." A slow smile crept onto her face. She reached beside her desk and pulled out a heavy, high-gloss lookbook from a national student design competition from the previous year. She flipped it open to the center spread and slid it across the table toward me. It was a feature on an eco-conscious streetwear collection I had designed during my junior year, which had won a Regional Innovation Award. I had submitted it under my full name, Maya Lynn Russo. She had remembered the collection. In fact, she had been one of the guest judges who voted for it. "I argued with 3 other board members to give you that regional award," Dr. Vance said, her voice carrying the smooth authority of someone who had shaped the industry for decades. "They thought your patterns were too risky. I thought they had soul. Looking at you today, it seems you haven't lost that edge." We talked for 45 minutes, though the interview was only scheduled for 20. Dr. Vance and the panel didn't just ask about my sketches. They asked about my philosophy, my resilience, and how I handled constraints. I answered every question with absolute transparency, completely discarding the safe, generic answers I had been rehearsing in my head at dawn. Near the end of the interview, Dr. Vance gestured toward the bold gold and black lines cutting across my emerald trench coat. "That design choice on the back," she said, raising an eyebrow. "It's incredibly aggressive for a presentation. What was the inspiration?" I looked her dead in the eye and said, "It wasn't an inspiration, Dr. Vance. It was sabotage. Someone spray painted a black mark across my work 4 hours ago to make sure I wouldn't show up today. I didn't have time to remake it, so I decided to reframe it. If my work is going to bear a scar, I'm going to make sure it looks expensive." The room went dead silent. Dr. Vance stared at me, then looked down at her notepad and scribbled something down. She looked back up, a sharp, fiercely proud glint in her eyes. "Spoken like a true designer. Thank you, Maya." 6 weeks later, a thick white envelope arrived in my mailbox. I opened it standing in the driveway in the stinging cold. Parsons School of Design Graduate Fellowship. Full tuition merit scholarship. I was one of only 5 fellows selected nationwide. I walked into the house and slid the acceptance letter onto the kitchen island where my family was gathered. My stepmother picked it up, read it, and her face went completely pale, a mix of superficial pride and deep, heavy guilt. "Maya, oh my God, I always knew you had a gift." I quietly pulled the letter back from her hand. "Please don't pretend you supported this," I said, my voice entirely level and calm. She completely froze. My father looked at the letter, gave me a brief nod, and muttered, "Good job, kid." It was all he knew how to give, and I accepted it for exactly what it was. Nothing more. Logan never looked me in the eye. He never apologized, and he never acknowledged the coat. But it didn't matter anymore. His attempt to destroy my future had accidentally given me the exact visual detail that made the director of a prestigious New York fellowship remember my face out of hundreds of applicants. He tried to ruin my armor, but he only ended up making it unforgettable. I still keep that emerald trench coat. It hangs in the front of my closet in my apartment in Manhattan today, just a few blocks from the Parsons studio. I don't wear it anymore. I don't need to. It already did its job. Some people will spend their entire lives trying to make you smaller. They will throw paint on your masterpiece the night before your big moment because they are terrified of watching you win. But what they don't understand is that the people who are truly meant to build something will find a way to do it, using whatever pieces they have left. I walked into that room with a sabotaged coat, and I walked out with my entire future. If this story inspired you, hit that subscribe button right now. Every week on this channel, we bring you real, powerful narratives of creators who refuse to stay broken. You definitely don't want to miss what's coming next.